Hey friends, this is VPU Radio again on a beautiful Friday evening here, and I've got a very special guest right from the legislature, and you must have seen his face so much here lately. It's Honorable MLA Shane Getson. How much time now you get to spend on flying? How much do you miss flying? Because as a pilot,
Yeah, I love flying. So with me, it was one of those things as a kid, growing up from the farm, I always wanted to fly, and it was between my grandmother and my wife, and there was a couple other people I met, some mentors along the way that actually told me to go out and get it done.
favorite food?
Oh, it's got to be steak. And favorite drink, it's right now, it's neck and neck between chai and buka,
Oh wow!
kombucha. Because when I was over in India, my guys were teasing me. I said I should get one of those NASCAR hats and put a couple of chai cups on either side because it was so good. I just had that by the pitcher full. It was excellent.
Favorite movie?
Old Yeller. As a kid, that was one that was really great. A river runs through it. That's another really good one. There's a few different ones out there, but typically the ones that get me the most are the ones that have some connection with some emotion with either a place or with people, and that there's always a little bit of wisdom and a story out of that. And that's the type that I like the best.
What type of music would you like to listen when you just alone?
I'm varied. I go from everything from hard rock to country to classical to even just sounds of weather sometimes. It depends on the mood or what I'm up to. If
Lately, it's Honorable MLA Shane Getson, who has been certainly so active in the community, and I've seen him lately in most of the events. He's been really highly rated. He's a MLA from Lac Saint, and Parkland since 2019, and he's a private pilot. But today we'll just go right into the heat. And again, first of all, welcome MLA Getson to our show. It's been a long-awaited one.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate your patience. And for those that are following along here, if you hear any background noise, I'm parked over on the side of the road, and it's just starting to rain cats and dogs here. So the life of an MLA, if you ever want to know what it's like, it's one moment to the next, and you never know where you're going to be, and you just make do with what you got and do the best you can. So hopefully everyone appreciates that today here as well.
However, there's always a positive side. We always try to look at the positive side, believing and trusting the leaders who are kind of driving the ship and driving the bus for over 4 million people here. How do you find, when you look at from that perspective, where are we going from here? Where is Alberta going?
Nowhere to go but up. I mean, that's literally where we're at. So you kind of hit the nail on the head. We're an economic driver in the country. Right now with the federal election, I think we're at a place where we need to give about 6 months. It's kind of what we said with the new administration coming in. But we're going to still continue to be very assertive on the items and the actions that we needed to make sure as we go forward as a country that we pull together. There's a lot of frustrations, and if we, quite frankly, carried on that way, it wouldn't work out well for the country or the West as a whole. And we've got a lot of really good allies that are working on it. So again, the economic corridors model, you'll hear that national interest corridors, transportation, energy corridors. It's all that economic corridor that originally originated from Alberta. And those ideas are very encouraging here going forward. So lots of good things. I think Canada, with the trade relations with the U.S., has brought it to the forefront for everybody that a number of the policies over the last 10 years that we've put in place have actually put us in a compromised position. So as a country, we need to make sure that we've got more than just one trading partner. And we make things here, and we also look towards other trading partners across the pond. And India is definitely one of those trading partners that we want to work with going forward. And really, we're a safe place for them to invest, a secure energy supply, food, and all those things. And I had a chance to go back there in February, and the doors were flung wide open for us. So we're very much leading the forefront. We want to make sure that our country's strong, and we want to make sure that we've got good partners going forward internationally as well.
Energy, trade, firearms. If I were to give you one of the topics to begin with, which one is closest to your heart?
All of them. Yeah, honestly, it's all the above. But for me, the best thing that we did was there was lots of folks in the community. We go out to these events, and as a politician, was always frustrating for me where you kind of show up, you talk to people, you show up for 10 minutes, they take the pictures, and then they're off to the next event. And for me, that was one of the most disingenuous things when politicians do that. So I don't consider myself that type of politician. I'm just a regular person. And when we did projects, it was always with stakeholder engagement, and being a farm boy, a country boy, growing up that way, when you meet with people and you're breaking bread and you're having a coffee or a tea or you're having lunch with them, you take the time to get to know the people. So there was a lot of really good people from the community, the Indian community in Edmonton and Alberta here in Calgary as well, that I got to know over the last while, and we really connected on a number of levels, those common interests that you're talking about in those files, and how we could work better together moving forward, quite honestly. So folks from the community welcomed me in, knew I didn't know much about India at the time or a ton of the culture, and they were very accommodating and forgiving my my frailties and stumbling around in that. And then we started working together of what we could do on improving Alberta and how we could tie in. So I literally put together a group of about 8 or 9 people in behind the scenes from each one of those different industries. And now we're at the point where this is going to be formalized. It'll be coming out here really soon, a formal announcement that we have an advisory council to the Premier and coordinated through myself, specifically on India and a number of those areas, and how we connect business and how we connect people and how we really promote these economic corridors, go back and forth between India and ourselves.
So that's a great point you brought, because again, such corridors will, of course, has proven to be great trade, supporting the trades which happen between the two destinations. In your opinion, what are the few products are going to move faster between the two countries? What is going to come more in and what is going to go out of Alberta to India? If you can maybe talk about some products so that people should look for the exporters or the importers looking for, who would benefit the most?
Well, let's put it this way. It's the basic things you need to live. So you need shelter. So we can't send over a ton of shelter. That's not going to help. You're going to need water. Well, we're going to keep our water here. We can't do that. But you're going to need food and energy. And India being the size that it is, 1.5 billion people, they're going to consume roughly, in the next 5 to 10 years, 25% of the overall world's energy demand on a yearly basis is going to be in India. And then plus all those mouths to feed. Alberta and Canada, the prairies here especially, we're blessed with some of the most richest agriculture lands in the world. We're literally could be that breadbasket for the world. So you're going to see the ag and the energy files for sure. Now, some of the information I went on a personal trip because the federal relations with the outgoing administration wasn't good, from the Canadian side. And we went over there, just myself and a few of those friends from that advisory council, our own dime and our own time, and just to meet people. Well, once people found out that an MLA was traveling with some of these other, very esteemed colleagues from Alberta, they just kept opening the doors for us. So I met with the Secretary of Energy. I met with the Chief of Staff from one of the First Ministers, basically the Premier over in Mumbai. I met with a ton of the film and television industries. I met with people from aerospace and aviation. Met with people that were in manufacturing, even the pulp and paper industry. Met with agriculture folks. Like, it was right across the board. But I'll go back to the point of what was very salient for me was that India survives because they trade and they work with everybody. So the way a couple of the different ministers pointed it out to me was, if there was a pyramid and a triangle, at the top is India, and the base is going to be the USA, and it's going to be Russia. So they have to trade with both big jurisdictions in the world. And when they're looking at energy, they get it from both of those jurisdictions. It's just how India has to function in the world by geopolitics. So when they're looking at that same time, this energy conference, which has only been running for 3 years, they had over 70,000 people at this energy conference. Like, that was astounding. The energy minister giving us, about 45 minutes of his time to explain the model, and we got to tell him about what we're doing in Alberta. And what folks may not realize out there is that we've changed some legislation so Alberta trades with barrels in kind. Now, you have to remember that our provinces in Canada are a bit different than a lot of the states and nations. Typically, most countries, the federal government controls the mineral assets and the energy, the oil and gas. Well, in Canada, we're unique. Our premiers back in the day, they negotiated that the provinces are actually controlling that. So when we articulate that to the global market, then the eyebrows pop up. So when I'm telling them, you don't make deals with Trudeau and or Carney, you make deals with the provinces. Like, we're the ones that actually own the ink and own the oil. And that opens the whole conversation up. So at the same time that I was over there, Prime Minister Modi was in the U.S. with President Trump, and President Trump was selling him an extra $10 billion worth of gas a year. And when I explained to the energy minister how integrated we are with the U.S., how, their energy imports, we take the top 3 countries in the world that they buy fuel from or buy oil from, Alberta outstrips all 3 of those. And then 99% of their gas imports directly comes from Alberta. And, well north of 60% of all of the import energy that the U.S. gets from foreign countries, well north of 50% of that comes from Alberta, just for the oil side. So when I explained to them that we wouldn't disrupt one of those pillars, that actually you would be solidifying those relationships, because you'd be getting it from the U.S., which gets it from us, but you could also invest in Canada, in Alberta specifically, and you can make deals directly with us, regardless of what port you get it from, for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of barrels a day of production. And we were looking at doubling production. So when we're looking, roughly 4.3 to 5 million barrels a day, we can get you up to 10 million barrels a day if you're investing. Completely changed the conversation. So that's what they were waiting for too, was the federal election to get over and done with, so they could get Alberta and Saskatchewan and the other provinces back to the table, but specifically Alberta and Saskatchewan. So that's what opened the door up there. So the first thing that we can do is to make sure that there's good, clean, ethical energy over to India. And when I was meeting with the oil companies there too, they wanted the same thing.
It's so exciting to hear all this. However, I'm sure there must be some roadblocks as well. Must be.
Yeah, it's
what are the?
So as Canada, we've federally has messed up the policies for a number of years, and that's why the economic corridors conversation we started out with is so relevant right now, because those are the stumbling blocks. Like, a few of the folks over there were hearing, in your industry, they get a lot of bad news. They get the sound bites and the bad news stories. So they're hearing that, and they have to sift through it. So they heard that the First Nations weren't behind these projects. Well, the truth is they're all behind them. You get a few outliers that are against it, but what we've done with the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corp, with these corridors, you've got First Nations that are 100% behind these projects because they're part of it, and we're building out for the next 7 to 10 generations of infrastructure. The other one was, well, how do you get it to port? Well, I kind of explained to them nicely, let me figure that out. What I need is long-term contracts, and we'll do the barrel swaps, and we'll do the trades, which they all understood. So when it comes to trading the commodities on the market on the ocean, we can backfill different supplies and those things. When it came to the refining capacity, India takes 50% heavies with their big refineries. Everybody wants our heavy oil. It used to be before everybody wanted lights, but you can make more things, like your phones and all the polymers and everything else and the asphalts. That's a higher valued product. So as soon as we get that to market, their refineries are already set up for that. So their concern was, well, what are you doing as Canada to get out of your own way? And then that's when I explained the economic corridor model, the AOC, where we're going to be able to move these products and that barrel in kind. That starts to open up the conversations.
It's a shame when I heard that as much as we can talk about 25% tariffs, the intra-provincial tariffs are much higher. If we can, if we only focus on 10 provinces and try to break through and start moving the products within, then these trade corridors would be so small in meaning, because within Canada, 46 million people can do so much of magic. How can this shame can turn into a fame? What can provinces do? How can they do? And why aren't this being done for so many years that everyone knows? But still, every province is looking outside. It seems like it's easier to trade outside than inside.
I know, it's ridiculous. So what I've told folks is we have to become Canadians again rather than Canadians, because we found every reason why we can't do things. So it's nothing like having your biggest trading partner or your big brother come over to you and give you a punch in the shoulder and say, hey, kid, smarten up. So that's exactly what people, I think, in Canada needed a little bit, was clean up your own backyard, because you're taking those relationships for granted, north and south, and the other trading partners. And at the same time, we've been kicking each other in the shins rather than winning a race working together. So as Alberta, we dropped all of our trade barriers a long time ago. We've been the free trading province. That hasn't been reciprocated. The other thing we managed to do was to get memorandums of understanding signed up with Manitoba, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Northwest Territories. We're on the hunt for the other provinces to join us on that. We're working really well with Ontario as well behind the scenes of talking about these corridors also, and signing these MOUs to say when we're building linear infrastructure projects, when we're looking at harmonizing the freight and moving dimensional loads and axle weights and everything else, when we're building national building projects and ports, we're going to support each other. We're going to stop tripping each other up. And the other one that was, I'm sorry, I almost tongue-in-cheek laugh because of how silly we've become. When federally and provincially in some of the provinces, when they stopped us from building pipelines to take energy and keep it all north of the border to get it to our eastern provinces, the route that we had to go was to send it south of the border into U.S. tankage, and then to send it from the U.S. back into the eastern provinces. The politicians down east didn't realize that is what it was. So when they were all intonating, I'll just cut off the pipes, we literally had to tell them, are you sure you want to shut off your own energy supply? Like, you guys got in the way of this. You literally are dependent now on the U.S. system, which comes from Alberta. And moreover, when we're talking taxation dollars and what the taxpayers should be concerned about is that we lose on the differential. So the differential cost of what we trade our commodity to the U.S. versus the global market. And the reason why there's a differential is because they can squeeze us in that regard, because we have no other ports to put it to because of the tanker bans and a bunch of these other silly things they put in effect. And they got in the way of pipelines and made it very difficult for investors to go do it without having the country get involved and drive the cost of 10 times more costly than what it should be to build these projects. Because of all of that, you had a constriction of it. So now you've got not only the trade differential of the oil, you've got a difference in the dollar value. But when that oil goes across the border and it ends up in those big tank farms in the States, in Superior, Wisconsin as an example, that then becomes U.S. oil. The U.S. does not have those impediments. They have a strong U.S. dollar, and they don't have a trade differential. So when Eastern Canada is buying back Alberta oil that now just became magically U.S. oil in those tanks, they're paying it at a U.S. dollar rate, and they're also paying it full market commodity price. So this is absolutely asinine as a country that we've done this to ourselves because we wanted to, put elbows up and run around and save the planet by not building pipelines in one of the least populated countries in the world with the best environmental policies. Like, this is where it's getting stupid. But post-election results, we've had to educate a bunch of people. We kept our communications open with the U.S., and that's why Alberta was never, ever, ever going to be having these massive tariffs, because the U.S. knew how integrated we were. And quite frankly, we've had good conversations like we are now for years with our colleagues in the States. And moreover, when the new administration was coming through, they could trust Alberta. They knew who we were, and we could have those conversations, and they work with us. So the other thing is we addressed the border issues in sincerity, not just in platitudes. So we put our money where our mouth was, and we could demonstrate it, and they saw what we were doing. And Premier and her team did a phenomenal job of reaching out through networks and connections to make those inroads, to make sure that we were a trusted ally up north. And then we were beaten up. Like you said, there was a lot of bad news stuff, but we were beaten up for being outliers, not being Canadian. Well, actually, we were the most Canadian ones around because we were trying to save, not through emotions, but through literally hundreds of millions of dollars of tariffs were delayed because we did that approach. And when you've got Ontario, and I don't know the numbers offhand here sitting on the side of the road, but roughly $50 million a day in trade. Well, we've got $143 to $200 million a day worth of trade going back and forth. So when they're telling us to, suck it up and shut it off, well, it's absolutely disproportionate. And then don't even get me going on the tariffs or the transfer payments of how much we send down east. Like, I think Ontario took about $500 million of ours last year, and Quebec had about $13 billion that was allocated. We spend more on transfer payments. I think it's around $50 billion we maybe get back. The differential is about $30 billion roughly that we never see. So every federal dollar we get back costs us about $1.30 because it's our money in the first place. So if we're going to fix these things, if we're going to make sure that we're genuine as a country and we get these things fixed, all we're asking for as Alberta is knock off the BS. Let us actually get our products off market. Let us work with these other jurisdictions, and let's build up that resilience as a country again to make sure that we're self-sufficient, not to be at the whims of potential trade wars or changing administrations through an electoral cycle.
What are some of the other countries which are in the minds of Alberta with economic corridors, like 2-3 other countries where we are focusing as much as we're focusing with India?
Yeah, there's obviously Asia is a big market for us, so you can see Japan and Korea. So we've had the Premier and a number of ministers over there. The Middle East is always going to be a big play for us because we're seeing changes on where we actually move our commodities and where they're going to be broken up. So instead of all the loads going over the sea cans going to China, a lot of that's going to go into the Middle East, into Dubai, and be taken out from there and moved around the world. We're also seeing reciprocals of that when they're starting to build out in the Port of Vancouver, Halifax, and also in Prince Rupert. So you'll see that. What I'm focusing on is basically 3 major pillars. So India is one of them. And then I've concentrated on the Arctic. So the Arctic and the Northern Europe, so the Scandinavian countries, and also the Baltics. Those are big plays for us there. You can see a lot more work that'll be taking place with Germany and the likes of those countries that are major economic powers that need our energy in that side. And then the other one is literally it's Fortress North America. So how do we make North America function really well between Mexico, Canada, and the U.S.? So those are the biggest jurisdictions that I'm going to be tying into. And when you look at it, there's a lot of countries involved there. So the Arctic is going to be a big deal, and I'll maybe pause there and let you ask me why.
About to, but prior to that, one more, and then I think I have a follow-up question with
Sure.
why. Don't you feel when Alberta is making moves, premiers meeting so many good countries and talking about opening the economic corridors to Alberta, how does she, or how would you defend, because Alberta does not have a port of its own, right? And the economic corridor needs a port. So how do you justify that roadblock to, in the minds of other countries? They would always think, where would the material come and go from?
Yeah, it depends on the material. Like again, Alberta doesn't have a port of its own because we're landlocked. Right. Ideally, I would love to see us, having a big swath out to the Arctic and having corridors there. We already have in Prince Rupert. Ideally, it's kind of called by Prince Rupert and the area. It's already called Alberta's port because all of our commodities go out through there. And the good thing with Prince Rupert is that it has lots of room to grow. It's a deep sea port, everything else. So that's kind of our de facto port. When we're talking to other countries about it, it's let me worry about the ports. We're going to get those built out. When we're working really well with Ontario and Manitoba on getting access into Hudson Bay, we're definitely working there as well. Saskatchewan's on side with that. Northern British Columbia just loves us. There's no question there. Like, they would join us in a heartbeat. If you were talking about redrawing maps and doing those things, they're very in tune. It's the same culture. It's the same mindsets typically behind the way folks work. Families move back and forth. Those are natural corridors there. And then the Arctic, with Alaska, they're like long lost cousins. They think the same way we are as well. So when I'm talking to other folks, to your point about the ports, we already have good connectivity. It's the price of what it takes to get it out of those ports and potentially the volumes. So we send a ton of stuff down to the Gulf. We already have that set in place. You already send a ton of stuff down in Halifax. And then you've got CP Rail now, which can run contiguous all the way down through Mexico without breaking loads and breaking trains. So technically, we're pretty connected now. Our frustration is some of this false policy that's been put in place to impede certain products that are only found from Alberta. And that's where we're really being assertive, let's put it that way, assertive on what needs to change going forward, and that stuff has to be knocked off. And it's been said that, around some certain tables with finance ministers, that we've got a lot of support from the other provinces. And one of the catchphrases I heard recently, I can't tell you where it came from specifically, because I can't tell you, but they basically said, if you want Canada to thrive and to dig ourselves out of debt, you have to unshackle and you have to unleash the West. You have to let Alberta do what they do best. So when we've got that type of support, that's what I can also share with folks going, where are your problems, where are your pinch points, and how are you working them? That's what we're doing there. And the other one I would say is, if you look to Germany, when Germany needed gas, they were looking at what was taking place in Russia. They came over to Canada and they were told there was not a business model. There absolutely was a business model. The message that went through to them was, yes, we can help you, and here's how we do it. When Germany heard that audible, the change in tune from Trudeau, and it only happened 10 days before the Chancellor came here, Trudeau changed his mind and said something different than what everyone was anticipating. They had to make a deal with Qatar to go get their gas. Germany put in receiving stations within 150 days, and that was from a federal minister who was from the Green Party. So when there's a need to put things in place, either you're putting floating degasification or gasification areas, there's platforms you can pull and tow them out into the bays and do that. We can slam pipe in the ground really quick. It's never been a problem of the men and women that actually put these things together to do it well. It's always been about politicians getting in the way. So that's the biggest challenge, but we also have the biggest chance and opportunity right now with everyone seeing what took place with the states of how we can actually get things built. And out west, we've got lots of support that want to do this together. And now we've got, we'll see how it goes, but a federal government, both leaders when they were running out there were talking about doing just that, to get these economic corridors and these trade corridors and these energy corridors off the ground.
For some reasons, I heard the payment equalization is sent every year, but still they're not happy. You don't get the attention. So if at all, and I know there's a lot of work being done on the alternative source of energy as well, especially the Grand Prairie. I heard how much alternate energies is being built there, not just based on the what you call the oil sands kind of thing, but other forms of energies as well. If that become Alberta's kind of forte tomorrow, do you think that will bring some support from the feds or
Yes. Yeah, the short answer is yes. So when it comes to hydrogen, we've led in that file, and Dr. Amit Kumar, phenomenal gentleman out of the U of A, mechanical engineer, he led our hydrogen task force essentially and gave us our hydrogen roadmap 3 years ago already. 4 years it's coming up. And Alberta literally is the largest producer of hydrogen in North America, full stop. We've been doing this for 20 years because with all of our synthetics and our processing, when we're, in the refining side of it and the petrochemical industries, we've just been doing this for years. Where we have to challenge other jurisdictions that are starting to get into the game is when they want to start taking and wasting, and I'm going to say this very pointedly, wasting energy and ruining water, fresh drinking water supplies, because they want to make hydrogen out of it. So the models that they're pitching elsewhere in these energy deficient nations is that you use wind and solar to use electrolysis to take fresh drinking water and to crack that and to make it into hydrogen. It is the least efficient way of transfer of energy in states that you can ever have. And the last time I checked, I can't drink gasoline or natural gas, but I can have a nice clean glass of water. I need water to live. I don't need natural gas to live, right, in that context. So when I'm telling folks that when you hear these other green transition groups out there feeding you that BS, it is absolutely that. It makes no economical sense, nor does it make sense to take that out when there's millions of people in the world that need our food, not just our energy, and we need to feed and water our animals and make sure that we live. There's other jurisdictions literally that have gone to war over water, so why would we waste this massive abundant resource that we have at our fingertips? So on that file, yeah, we're absolutely leading in that. We work with our U.S. colleagues as well on that. And when I'm talking to these other jurisdictions, what I tell them is if they want to transition, an energy transition, then you should use our natural gas, LNG, as that transitionary fuel, because you already have your distribution systems. Your pipelines literally can receive natural gas. I can't give you pure hydrogen because you'll have to rebuild all of your pipeline infrastructure and your distribution systems, as would we. So people have to be realistic, not just aspirational, and listen to the engineers and the technical folks that are trying to sort the problems out. It's a transition. It's not a revolution. It's a transition to that. So Alberta absolutely leads in that file, and then that's why a lot of these other jurisdictions are talking to us. So it's not only the conventionals, it's the aspirational power doing it, and that transition, the distribution. So yeah, we're leaders on that file.
Lately, the 51st state has become a hot topic. Everyone knows what does it mean, and some laugh on it, some become serious on it. Quebec has been always been criticized for being blackmailers of being the separatists, and they've always bring that card where they play very well in order to get more money, I guess. And they've always played that card culturally, linguistically, showing the difference. However, now This noise certainly has taken up a little bit more on both good side, bad side. You've got people in favor, people not liking. Alberta picking up that card of and trying to motivate some or maybe have some noise. How much is it an emotional blackmail? How much is it just a blackmail, or do you think there's any seriousness around it?
Well, there's a few different things. And if we go back, you have to go back to the history of our country, like when it comes to it. And we're just a baby. Like, we talk about India and China and even Europe, for crying out loud. You talk buildings they have there, they have outhouses that are older than our country, right? If we're only 150 years old and change here. So 3-4 generations, you can go back to the start. Like, I can trace my own family history back to 1751 when they left Europe, when Napoleon was doing his thing and came to Canada. And my grandfather, my grandpa Getson, he came to Alberta in about 1918. So Alberta was only conceived in 1905. So this is all very new. We're just little babies, quite honestly, of learning how to grow up. And when you look at our Constitution, like literally it was done in 1982. I'm older than our Constitution. So we're just pretty new in this. So people have to understand that when you've got something that new, there's going to be some rub points and some friction, and you shouldn't be scared of having conversations about what's the next 100 years going to look like, even the next 50 years. So put that in context, and that's why I kind of smiled. When it comes down to the 51st state, the first time that somebody was talking about making Canada the U.S. was Benjamin Franklin when he was negotiating the deal after the War of Independence that the Americans fought against the British. That's the only reason why they got Illinois and Minnesota, was because they negotiated that. Ben Franklin was going for everything. And you have to remember, at that time, it was only 13 colonies along the eastern seaboard for the most part. The continent U.S. that we recognize now, that wasn't there. The Louisiana Act wasn't there. They didn't have to fight the war with Mexico at the time, or Spain, to win those territories, and they didn't expand out west. That didn't exist at that point. So that's the first time that everybody was talking about what could North America look like. Now, you have to think about what some of those reasons were. It wasn't just culturally. The river systems actually work that way. So the U.S. is blessed with a number of really good things. Their rivers go the right way. They go north and south. Ours don't. So when those trade corridors, those original economic corridors, it was easy to move cartage and goods. And you can still see that to today, when you can move tons of material. The cheapest way to transport it is by boat. The second then would be by pipe, and then by rail, and then you've got by cars and everything else. So they literally have the least value for ton-mile cartage of moving that. Now, the next thing you have to remember is, you think of the West. Well, what do you think of? Well, it's cowboys. It's the West. It's the Native Americans, the Native Canadians, all the Wild West. Well, then you have to think of the next thing. Well, what did they use? Well, there was the buffalo, okay. There was also the cattle. When you think about how the West was, our biggest commodity before was we had these big open prairies. The cattle went north and south too. They didn't go east and west. They went by rail once you raised them up, and they slaughtered them down east and moved them, but they all went north and south. So the same people that went out west in the United States also went out west in Canada, and they naturally traded north and south. So you've got family names and properties and everybody else out west. Our province had probably 50 or 60% people originally that claimed that they were U.S. citizens back before, when we were a territory. So this culture that we have, this cowboy culture, this Western thing, the way we carry ourselves, it's not by chance. And even our First Nations, they don't recognize the 49th parallel, because they go back and forth across the borders as well. Like, we're all the same people. So now in the modern day, when you've got some people intonating about the 51st state, that's why I kind of smile a bit. Well, we're friends, relatives, and cousins. The U.S. and ourselves out west, we have a common problem always. It's decision makers back in the populated east, because we all came in the wagon train and came out west one way or the other. So for me, it doesn't bother me as much. It's more of a matter of pride. And when you talk to people, we don't want to be at the 51st state. We're Canada, for crying out loud. But to put it in context, and folks better figure this one out, when President Trump is talking about the 51st state, he's not talking about all of Canada. He's talking about Alberta and Saskatchewan. Because again, culturally, we're in alignment. We have all the resources and energy you could ever want, and we can connect them basically into Alaska. So in the whole Arctic context and the global context there's a lot of reasons why the Arctic is very prevalent, and it's simply because the Arctic ice is melting, you won't have the shipping restrictions that you do in the Panama Canal. So all those ships are going to be moving up north, which they are already. And that's why a ton of countries, inclusive of India, are claiming an Arctic presence, because those are the shortest shipping routes in the entire world. And that's why everyone's going to be paying attention up there.
If I were to ask you, if you had to pick one ministry for yourself, if Premier came and said, Shane, come pick one, which one would you pick for yourself? What would you love to really lead in terms of the department?
Well, it's funny, we had that conversation. So there was 4 that I'd said that I could do a really good job at, and but now that the model is kind of advanced, the position I'm in right now is her parliamentary secretary. So I report directly to the Premier on that, and she's the Minister of Intergovernmental Relations. So on that side of it, that file, I would have to say that economic corridor development, if she carved out a ministry to allow me to do what I'm doing as her parliamentary secretary, that would be great. Jobs, economy, and trade, that's an interesting one. Transportation, economic corridors. Like, we literally, because of the economic corridor work I did, she changed the name of transportation to be transportation and economic corridor. So that's how serious we're taking this. Those would be kind of the 3 natural fits. But honestly, the work I'm doing right now is on that development side. Other than being that minister specifically for that task, I don't know that there is one that would give me the latitude and the ability to work with as many people and as many communities, and to be out front trying to form these relationships that we're doing right now. So a long way of saying, I guess, I don't know that there's one size you could give it, unless she elevated this position just in title alone, because she's given me so much free rein and support to do this, that I'm completely happy with where I'm doing what I'm doing right now. And the biggest thing that I would like to do before my political career is over is to have this task force and all these good people working together that continues past my electoral cycle, and make sure that these economic corridors are put into place and we ratify them on paper, so that it will be for the next 150 years of the country going forward that will actually allow us to become Canadians and to thrive again.
If you allow me to just let my viewers, let Albertans, or maybe people all across the globe watching this know you closer, I'll ask you a few things, and that maybe just change up the mood on the lighter side. How much time now you get to spend on flying? How much do you miss flying? Because as a pilot,
yeah, I love flying. So with me, it was one of those things as a kid, growing from the farm, I always wanted to fly, and it was between my grandmother and my wife, and there was a couple other people I met, some mentors along the way that actually told me to go out and get it done. I don't spend enough time flying. I'd love to have my head in the clouds all the time, honestly. I say it's like being on God's doorstep up there when you see the province and you get to travel and do things that way. But average on year, I'd say about 50, 55 hours a year. I've managed to, prior life when we were doing big linear projects, to use the plane to get home and look at right-of-ways and those things. In this world, I've used my plane a number of times when I head down to conferences in the States, or if I need to get somewhere in the province, if the weather is conducive, I can take 10 hours of driving and turn it into 2 hours of flying to get to places. So I love flying, love to do it, not enough. And if anybody ever wants to get into it, don't wait, just go do it, because it's one of the best things I've ever done.
Last 5 questions, maybe not as long as I would expect, just 1 or 2 words. Favorite food?
Oh, it's got to be steak. I know that's going to be bad for a lot of people out there, but farm kid, that's steak and potatoes. I love that. And favorite drink, it's right now, it's neck and neck between chai and buka.
Oh, wow.
Kombucha. Because when I was over in India, my guys were teasing me. I said I should get one of those NASCAR hats and put a couple of chai cups on either side, because it was so good. I just had that by the pitcher full. It was excellent.
So, well, when it comes to food, so thank you for the food part. Now, the movie. What type of movies? Favorite movie?
Old Yeller. As a kid, that was one that was really great. A River Runs Through It. That's another really good one. There's a few different ones out there, but typically the ones that get me the most are the ones that have some connection with some emotion with either a place or with people, and that there's always a little bit of wisdom and a story out of that. And that's the type that I like the best.
What type of music would you like to listen when you're just alone?
I'm varied. I go from everything from hard rock to country to classical to even just sounds of weather sometimes. So it depends on the mood or what I'm up to. if I need to get pumped up for something, or if I'm going to the gym, then it's, a heavier beat, obviously. My background is German and Norwegian as well, so Nordic. So I've started listening to some of the old Nordic music as well to try to reconnect, and that seems to help. Along those lines, I'm a little varied all over the place. And then road trips, nothing better than a good old country song while you're driving down the road to appreciate where you're at.
That's exactly what I want to listen to, and thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate, folks. This is MLA Honorable Shane Getson, who really spent so much time with us explaining how things function at the Alberta Legislature. This is a new section which B4U has added in knowing your MLA, understanding deeper relationships of Alberta with different provinces, different countries, and how the leaders are working hard enough inside to make things look outside good. So thank you so much, MLA, here joining me today in this short podcast. And I really appreciate my COO, Dr. Vandana Srivastava, giving me a good logistical support in hand. So with that said, I wish Alberta a very, very best wishes, good luck, and of course you as well.
Thank you, sir. Take care, and thanks for having me.
Thank you.